Joint mobility. Now, for this particular session, you may or may not be able to tell, but I just have a very simple chair beside me. You may or may not need a chair beside you. You may or may not need a wall beside you, but I'm going to use this stuff because, we're going to be standing on one leg every now and then, and it's just going to help, take one aspect out of the equation. We don't have to worry about balancing. So here we go. Let's start with our feet and work our way up. This is my right hand, and I'm just placing it on the chair for stability. My right leg is staying on the ground. I'm going to bend my opposite leg, and I'm going to try to just roll over my toes. I should say I'm trying to roll over my toe pads and then my toenails. So if I turn sideways, hopefully you can see I'm keeping, this is my left leg, so I'm keeping my heel up toward the ceiling. I'm trying to roll over my toes. So when we roll over the toenails, that is flexion. And when we roll over the toe pads, that's extension. So we're trying to flex and extend the toes. And just breathe nice and easy. Try to focus on the toes that get a little sticky. So for example, usually my big toe, I focus a little more on my big toe, and I focus a little less on my middle toes and little toes. Just breathe in and out through your mouth. Let's say that again. Breathe in and out through your nose. And let's switch feet. Now, if you're facing a wall or facing a chair, you don't really have to do much. Just switch your weight to the opposite leg, and then we do the opposite set of toes. So if I turn and face you, it looks a little bit like this. You just breathe in and out through your nose. You may be able to see from this front view. See here, I'm emphasizing my big toes. And then if I kind of roll out to the side, you see, I start to affect my middle toes and my little toe. Excuse me. Just always doing your best to make sure nothing hurts. Start off very, very gently. And then maybe gradually as you warm up, maybe start to nudge the end range of motion, because you might get a little more flexion, you might get a little more extension. And when our toes and our feet are mobile, it just helps everything that goes up the chain. It helps your ankles, knees, hips, etc. Good. So hopefully we've got our toes nice and loose. Again, I'm going to hold on to my chair for stability. My right leg's going to stay on the ground. I'm going to bend my left knee. I'm going to try to do ankle circles. See if you can do ankle circles also. Deep breathing. Do your best to think of the entire foot moving around. Your heel, the middle part of your foot, and your toes. Really try to get full big circle. Now again, as I'm facing forward, hopefully you notice if you watch, you kind of gaze at my knee, you kind of gaze at my shin, they more or less stay still. Try to roll my ankle versus compensating through the rest of my leg. We'll get to the rest of the leg in a second, but let's really try to get our ankle to move around. Let's go the other way, please. Deep breathing. Just do the best you can do. Make sure nothing hurts, and really try to get the entire foot, the heel bone, all the foot bones and the toe bones, everything to kind of roll around if you can. Hang in there with me for a couple more breaths. 3, 2, 1, and then we'll switch sides. Put the weight on the opposite leg, bring the opposite knee up, and we try to do ankle circles on the other side. Same thing. Try to keep the leg and the shin as still as possible. You're just trying to roll the entire foot, the heel, everything. Steady breathing. Try to get the full range of motion. So really dorsiflex the ankle, turn the ankle, plantar flex, turn, etc. Breathe. Let's switch directions. Hang in there with me for 3, 2, 2.5, 1. Both feet down, both hands down. Just double check, see how you feel. Hopefully you feel some blood flow. Maybe your feet have spread out a little bit. You feel a little more solid on the ground. Now, next we're going to incorporate the knees, hips, and feet. The directions sound very complex. Really, all we're going to do is make the leg circle one way and make a leg circle the other way. But if we kind of zoom in on the details, it sounds very, very, very complex. So let's break it down and see if we can make it simple. Again, bracing myself against a wall or a chair. In this case, my left leg is coming up. Now, what we're going to try to do is externally rotate your femur bone. So my inside ankle bone comes up. Once you've externally rotated, extend your leg. Internally rotate, bend your knee, and come back to the starting position. So really that's just a circle. Externally rotate, extend, internally rotate, bend, starting position. And breathe. We're trying to extend into tension. So when the leg extends, it should be a little bit of resistance. Shouldn't be super, super easy. But by doing that, we're balancing out a lot of muscle groups here. We're balancing out the internal and the external rotators of the hip. We're balancing out the extensors and the flexors of the knee. We're also getting a little bit of extension and flexion of the hip. It's okay if you're going very, very clunky. You might look like this, and that's okay. But eventually you smooth it out and it makes a circle. Good. Let's try the other side. Weight goes on the leg I was just working. Bend the knee slightly on the opposite leg. Externally rotate. Extend your knee. Internally rotate. Bend your knee. Back to the starting position. Externally rotate. Extend. Internally rotate. Bend. Starting position. Breathe. And maybe it smooths out and becomes a circle, and maybe it doesn't. That's all right. Take your time. Make sure it doesn't hurt. You will probably feel a little bit of work deep, 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 deep inside your hip bone, right where your femur bone meets your pelvis. We don't get a lot of mobility, non-mobility like this in our hips and in our shoulders. So just like anything else, we got to use it or lose it. A couple more repetitions. Hang in there with me. Breathe with me. For 3, 2, 1. Both feet down, both hands down. Shake out any residual tension you may feel. Now that one, we emphasized external rotation. Now we're going to try internal rotation, okay? So my right leg stays on the ground. I'm bracing myself so I don't have to balance. Left knee comes up. Now this time it's the outside ankle bone that's going to come up toward the ceiling. So this is internal rotation, extension, external rotation, bend, starting point. Internal rotation, extend, external rotation, bend, starting point. Internal, extend, external, bend. So it's the same circle, but it's in the opposite direction. It's okay if you're a little clunky or super clunky. Eventually it will smooth out and you can make a circle. Internally rotate, extend, externally rotate, bend. Breathe. Hang in there for 3, 2, 1. Both feet down, both hands down. I'm guessing you're starting to feel it deep inside your hips. That's a good thing. We're getting it nice and warm, getting it lubricated through here, and we're balancing out a lot of opposing muscle groups. Let's go to the other side. Hold on for stability. Put the weight in this case, my left leg. Bend your knee. Outside ankle bone toward the ceiling. That's internal rotation of the femur. Extend the leg. Externally rotate. Bend your knee. Starting position. Internally rotate. Extend. Externally rotate. Bend your knee. Starting position. And repeat. It's okay if it looks real clunky. Don't worry about if it's not super smooth. Concentrate on the extension through the tension. So when you internally rotate and extend, it should be not super easy. Breathe. Hang in there with me for 3, 2, 1. Did it get warm in here? Jill Miller calls those the weird sweats. Because we're not really doing a whole lot, but you see it heats up the whole body. So enjoy the weird sweats. Shake out any residual tension you may feel. Try not to do any extra stretching. Just shake out any residual tension. We want to keep all the good habits we're instilling. Now, if it's possible, let's take our feet kind of wide. Feet more or less pointing forward. Legs stiff, hands to your waist, and let's do some hip circles. Breathe. Now, if you've done hip circles in the past, hopefully you notice hip circles right now feel super easy. We really got in there and warmed up the ball and socket joint of the hip. Now, if you like, start making your hip circles bigger, wider. It's like you're exploring the edges of the end range of motion. It's okay if you keep your hip circles really, really, really small. It's okay if you take your hip circles really, really, really wide. Breathe. Keep some tension, keep some tone in your torso, keep some tone in your legs. Hang in there with me for 3, 2, 1. Let's come back the other way. Now, if you made your circles bigger, we will gradually make our circles smaller. If you stayed the same size, which is totally fine, that's cool, stay right where you are. But let's see if we can make our circles get smaller, smaller, smaller. Control, control, control. Hang in there and breathe with me. 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. And let's toe heel our feet together. And again, just double check, see how you feel. Is the weight distributed evenly, left and right, front and back? Is it easier to stand? There are no right or wrong answers, but just a way to keep that mind-body connection so that as we're going through joint mobility, it is a very mindful act instead of just mindless activity. Let's go through a couple of spinal twists. The first is the easiest. It's still very effective, but it's kind of easy to do. And this will be our foundational spinal twist. Stay here or progress with me. First, keep your feet glued to the ground, please. We're going to bend our knees in an alternate fashion. So one knee is bent, one leg is straight, and hopefully that's getting our hips to rotate. Now, as the hips start to rotate, let it turn your spine more and more. But the rotation is driven by your hips. If you were to stop walking in place, the spinal twisting stops. So you want to generate the energy from the ground, through your legs, through your hips, and you turn. Personally, I bend my arms a little bit. Try to keep my arms close to my body. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can hear that I'm slapping my kidneys. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. If you can, you start turning your head a little more. See if you can look over your shoulders. Try to take in as much of the room as you can. When I look behind me, when I look behind myself, when I look behind me, try to make sure that I can see the same spot left and right. Couple more rotations. We'll slowly unwind. Good. Now that particular variation, because you're moving your knees, it's a little easier on the low back than if we try to keep the hips still. So if you have low back issues, if you have sacrum issues, you may want to keep bending your knees. Now if you want to try a different version, we'll bring our hands up like this. It should look like you're holding a tree or holding a barrel. It's important to keep this sort of circular shape in your arms. Don't flex your elbows so much. Keep them slightly extended. Keep your wrists slightly bent. And this time we try to keep the legs straight. And we're rotating. Still, we're rotating from the hips, but it's a little more controlled. As you turn, only go so far as your hands more or less stay in front of your chest muscles, right? So as I turn this way, if I were to bend my elbows, my hands are still on my chest muscles instead of bending and my hands wind up on my shoulders, right? So you're trying to keep an imaginary barrel or an imaginary tree trunk between your arms. Now, as you rotate to the left, you want to counter-rotate with your hips. It will give the illusion that your hips and your legs stay still. So if you rotate your ribs to the right, counter-rotate your hips to the left. Breathe. If this is too complex, too complicated, just go back to the first version we did. Breathe deeply. Hang in there with me for 3, 2, 1, and slowly unwind. Good. The spinal twisting is definitely one of my favorites. I really enjoy that. Now let's keep working on the spine, and we'll do what's called lateral flexion. So we're going to do a couple different levels of lateral flexion. Lateral flexion just means side bending. So first, foundational version, leave your hands by your side. As you exhale, you're upright. As you inhale, bend one way or the other. Inhale. See if you can let your head drop, brain slosh, eyes, everything tilts to the side, come up, and then inhale, go the other way. And just repeat. Now, ultimately, of course, breathe any way you can, any way you like. But if you can, we try to inhale in the top set of ribs. Really try to get some stretching and mobility through that top set of ribs. Exhale, we brace. Inhale, we try to open up the other set of ribs. Breathe. Freeing up the rib cage helps with a lot of stuff. Helps with your posture. It helps with vital lung capacity. It helps with shoulder issues. It can help with neck issues. Hang in there with me for 3, 2, 1. Now, if you like, repeat what we just did. Or we'll take our feet a little wide, about shoulder width, and we're going to try to do what's called the sleeve puller. So in this case, this is my right hand. It's going to come up like I'm asking a question. Left hand grabs the wrist. I'm going to bend my knees a little bit so you can see. The other hand, the arm that's straight, gets grabbed by the other hand. This is a big inhale. As you exhale, pull your straight arm up and over, like you're pulling on a sleeve. It's called sleeve pull. Back to center, switch, pull the sleeve, back to center, switch. Repeat this a few times. This can help you with triangle pose in yoga. It can help you with side angle pose in yoga. It can just help stretch the entire side seam of your body, all the way from your outside ankle bone, all the way up to your pinky fingernail. Breathe. One thing to watch out for is to make sure you're not rotating. So if I go very, very, very slowly, hopefully you can see my torso versus this. Try not to rotate. Hang in there for 3, 2, 1. Bring your arms down. Shake out any residual tension you may feel. Check in with how you feel. Are your arms or your shoulders a little bit loose? Is it easier to breathe? Awesome. So now we'll get into what's called extension and flexion. So extension and flexion is, in yoga, it's cats and cows or cats and dogs. We can try a couple different ways. One is bend your knees slightly and rest the weight of your arms on your knees. So it kind of looks like you're catching your breath after you ran a 5K or something. From this position, we're going to try to curl up into a ball. Drop your chin, start to tuck your tailbone, and you really try to hunch your back. You're trying to curl up here. This is called flexion. Then we go the other way. Lift your tailbone and lift your chin bone. This is called extension. And repeat that a few times. In some ways, the breathing doesn't matter a whole lot as long as you keep your breath moving. What really matters is that you utilize the entire spine. Some folks, they'll just kind of bend in half, kind of like opening and closing a very stiff book. We're trying to really articulate each and every backbone, each and every intervertebral disc, full extension and full flexion. So what happens when we extend, it tightens up all the back muscles. And when we flex, it tightens up all the front muscles. One more inhale. One more exhale. Come to neutral, please, and stand up any way you can. Hopefully you're starting to feel good, starting to feel loose, starting to feel warm. Awesome. Now, let's work our way up from our hands up into our shoulders. So similar to what we did with the feet, start with your fingers. Bend your elbows slightly, turn your palms toward the ceiling, and flex and extend your fingers. Extension is when you open your palms really, really wide. Flexion is when you close your fingers really, really, really tight. Breathe. Now, if you want to, you can play around with the hand positioning. So if you want to turn your palms down, you can do it this way. If you want to keep, this is called pronating. If you want to keep pronating, you can work this. You will definitely find some sticky spots when you mess around with it. Neutral, now you start to supinate. Go the other way. You'll definitely find some sticky spots there. The goal is to find what needs work. So if it's very super easy for you in one range of motion or one plane, then play around a little bit and find a spot where it's not super, super easy. Not impossible, but just not super easy. Good. We'll shake that loose a little bit. And just for fun, let's try some dexterity. I did a YouTube video on this not too long ago, but it's just fun to try, and it's just good for your brain and good for your fingers. Now what we're going to try to do, it doesn't matter which, one hand we do a thumbs up, in the other hand you point, so an index finger. If I turn sideways, maybe you can see it clearer, I'm not 100% sure. One finger, index finger, one thumbs up. And then you switch back and forth without making any guns or any other configurations. It's either an index finger or a thumb, nothing in between. Breathe. So, among other things, this is just good for dexterity, coordination. It's good for your brain because your brain likes novelty. This is supposed to help build synapse bridges between brain cells. Do not practice this in public because you never know which finger is going to go where. Let's just do a couple more repetitions. It's okay if you go really, really slowly, but make sure you're trying to do both fingers at the same time. Instead of getting one finger set, then the other finger set. Good. Shake your hands out. And again, with your elbows bent, let's make fists, and we're going to do wrist circles. Very similar to what we did with the toes and the ankles. We're trying to just turn the wrists. Big circles as you can. So similar in scope to the legs. Hopefully you see my arms more or less stay still. So you don't want your arms going like this. Just like when we were doing the ankle circles, we didn't want our legs moving around a whole lot. Try to keep your arms relatively still and really work wrist circles. Breathe. Steady breathing in and out through your nose. This is helping to balance out the muscles in your forearms. Let's go the other direction, please. Steady breathe. When you're doing joint mobility, in general, what I recommend is you start off kind of easy. Get a feel for the wrist circles or whatever. And then once you kind of warm up, try to explore those end ranges, the edges, they call it playing with the edge. Really try to see if you can find some sticky spots. You're not trying to put yourself into pain. You're not trying to make it impossible, but it's joint mobility. So we want as much range of motion through our joints as possible. So it's a good idea, in my opinion, to really explore those end ranges. Awesome. Now, just like we did with our legs, we're going to do the same thing with our arms. We're going to do the extension through tension, and we're going to do it with the hitchhiker. One arm at a time, please. This is my left arm. It's about 45 degrees away from my body. I'm going to curl up all my fingers, but leave my thumb out like a hitchhiker. Internally rotate, so my palm faces down. Bend the elbow. Drag my thumb across my collarbones. So there's scapular retraction here. Externally rotate, extend the arm back to starting position. Internally rotate, flex the elbow, retract, externally rotate, extend, back to the starting position. Now again, that's just a lot of words for saying, kind of like make an arm circle. But the reason why we dig into all that detail is because there's a lot happening. You want to get your humerus to move, elbow to extend, shoulder blades to protract and retract. There's a lot happening in the deceptively simple looking move. You can go very, very slowly if you like. That's fine. You can go really, really fast if you want. Also fine. Just make sure that you're getting all those little nuances to the best of your ability. Hitchhiker. Now see if you can switch sides. Breathe. Supposedly, an advantage of being human is we can learn from one side to the other. Supposedly, if you can do something with your left side, let's say, you wind up teaching your right side. Unlike a horse, that supposedly, if you always mount a horse from the right, you've got to train it to be accustomed to being mounted on the left. You can fact check me that. You can fact check me in the comments with that one. That's just what I've heard. Really get this external rotation of the humerus here. Extend, internally rotate. Good. This is called the hitchhiker. Good. Nice. Shake that loose a little bit. Now we do the arm bar. So the arm bar, similar in scope, we start more or less from the same position. Curl up all your fingers except for the thumb. Turn your palm down, bend your elbow, but this time you're going to scratch your armpit. As you bring your fist behind you, now notice I'm going to move away from my fist. So you see there's some rotation in my trunk. I'm moving away from the fist. That's so I can get deep internal rotation on my shoulder. Back to the starting position. Bend the elbow, scratch the armpit, reach back with your fist, lean away from your fist. Starting position. Here. So whereas the arm bar emphasizes external rotation, oh, I said that backwards. The hitchhiker emphasizes external rotation. The arm bar emphasizes internal rotation. This is internal rotation. Internal rotation. An internal rotation is a little easier when we give it some room. And we give it the room by turning, flexing the spine a little bit, and getting deep internal rotation. Steady breathing. You're going to extend through some tension here, back to the starting position. And just like we did with our legs, we're doing the same thing with our arms, getting deep into this ball and socket joint of the shoulder. Good. Now let's see if we can switch sides. Arm bar, other side. Breathe. Go slowly. Even if I'm going real fast, you can go really, really, really slow. If I'm going real slow, you can go real fast. Breathe. Eventually it will smooth out. You're reprogramming your nervous system. You're developing a motor skill. The more and more you do it, the less and less resistance you'll feel in your muscles. Breathe. Breathe. Move away from your fist. Hang in there with me. Steady breathing for 3, 2, 1. Good. And just shake out your arms, shake out your legs. Take a second, just see how you feel. Is it easier to breathe? Do your shoulders feel free? Hands feel free? It's okay if the answer is no, 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 no. That just means you've got a heightened awareness of what's happening mind, body. But hopefully the answer is yes, 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 yes. And you start to really feel the benefit of the joint mobility. So let's keep working our way up, and we're going to unlock our skull a little bit. So again, just keep your teeth closed. Standing as upright as possible, breathing in and out through your nose. Let's look up and down. As you're looking up and down, do your best to keep your rib cage still. Try to keep your shoulders still. If I turn sideways, hopefully that makes it a little clearer. Some folks are tight and they'll compensate like this. It may not be as exaggerated as that, but we're trying to keep everything undisturbed and just flex and extend the cervical spine. Hang in there, please. A few more repetitions. Good. The next time you're more or less facing forward, pause, please. Now we'll do neck rotations. Same thing, try to keep your shoulders and your ribs still. Teeth closed, and we start to look over our shoulders, left and right. Again, make it easy at first. Work within whatever range of motion you have. Easy. Once you start to feel warmed up, once you start to feel loosened up a little bit, see if you can go 1/100th of a degree a little further. Just a little further. And then maybe another 1/100th of a degree further. Maybe not. Pain is always your barometer. You should never, ever, ever feel pain. But we also have to nudge adaptation. We have to gently put ourselves slowly but surely into just a little more end range of motion so we can put that away in our savings account. We never know when we're going to need it. Hang in there for 3, 2, 1. Good. Now we do lateral flexion, that's side to side. Now lateral flexion, you're trying to pivot from the tip of your nose. Here is exactly what not to do. Don't do this if you can help it. You see, if my nose was a magic marker, you'd be making a rainbow. You're trying to keep your nose more or less fixed, and you're going to do lateral flexion side to side this way. So now, if my nose were a magic marker, it would just be making a big dot. The dot would be getting darker and darker and darker. Breathe here. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Once it starts to feel easy, gently, maybe 1/1000th of a degree more in either direction. Just a little. We cannot force adaptation. It's got to come naturally. And it comes to us when our brain and our muscles are receptive to the input. We can't force it, but we can just gently nudge it, just easy. Good. How do you feel? Start breathing in and out through your nose. Let's take a couple of minutes and we're just going to stand and shake and shiver. So first, just kind of get rid of any residual tension in your body you may have. That's just to see how the joint mobility affected you. Stand more or less in a mountain pose and see how you feel. Are your feet kind of wide, spread out and grounded? Is it just easier to stand? Do you feel lighter? Is it easier to breathe? Is it easier to look over your shoulders? Now we're just going to get rid of any residual tension we have by shaking. So if it's possible, just keep your feet glued to the ground. And it's basically, you just do a series of little mini hops. Your knees are going to flex and extend. And that's just going to create, you can see some trembling and some shivering in my torso. And just let your arms and your fingers go loose. Be mindful of your teeth. Keep your teeth closed. You're literally just shaking out any residual tension. Let your arms hang off your shoulders. Let your hands hang off your wrists and your fingers hang off your hands. You can play around a little bit, maybe leaning to one side. See if that helps loosen up one side of your neck. Maybe the other side. Just be mindful. You don't have to be super vigorous, just easy. Maybe you drop your head a little bit. Maybe you look up a little bit. Just find spaces that you can literally just shake loose. Stop. Good. Now, if your chair is still nearby, or if the wall is still nearby, go ahead and hold yourself up. Shift your weight into one leg, and then just shake the other leg loose. The shaking takes place from your leg muscles. It's as if you're shaking water off of your shoes or slapping mud off of your toes. And you just try to gradually build up the speed through your leg. Your foot is just going to go along for the ride. You shake that loose. Fling that mud off your toes. Make sure you're outside when you're flinging the mud off your toes. Then we'll go to the other side. You shake that loose. Breathe. Good. Come back to mountain pose, please. Check to see how you feel. And that's joint mobility, another joint mobility session in the books. I hope it was helpful. I hope you will go forth and be awesome.